Evangeline Lin. Some of you may already follow my Facebook page called Lady of Leisure, where I share a lot about gardening tips and DIYs. Well, with the recent quarantine going on, I've noticed a lot of people have been trying to grow more edibles. So I decided that I would start a new series of videos. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you on first, how to sprout seeds. Now, there are two ways that you can sprout seeds. First, using soil. Secondly, no soil. A lot of people have problems sprouting seeds. They say maybe it's a poor quality of seeds, but there are many variables to why seeds cannot sprout. So firstly, it could be the depth that it is planted in actually. So referring to the chart you see here, the depth that you plant a seed actually matters. Now, when you're using a soilless method like this, all you need to do is spray the seeds with some water every few hours a day. Keep it covered from sunlight for the first 2 days or so. Here we have the pumpkin seeds that I sprouted without soil, just using water. Just spray the seeds a few times a day, every few hours. Or what you can do is also use the tauge method that I've shared on my Facebook page before. I will do a video in the next coming episodes about that, because some of you may prefer to see the method done in a video instead of a photo. So as you can see here, I've been saying that the roots will emerge first. Let me just tick it up for you. You can see. So once the roots start to emerge is when you can expose them to the light. So last night they were all looking mainly like this guy here. Just the starting of the sprouting, and then this started to emerge today. So once I exposed it to light, that's where the green comes out. So why do we need to expose them to light when they start to form the root out? It's because the leaves are going to need photosynthesis. So that's, of course, sunlight is required there. So once you get these fillers, you can see, you can start then putting them into compostable pots like this. And once these guys have started to grow their true leaves, what are the true leaves? This is the true leaf. When you start to see the real leaf, let me just do a little bit of focus here for you. There you go. So once you get this, you can let it grow a full set of 2 leaves, and then that's when you plant this entire pot, compostable pot, into the real pot that you want to transplant it to. So once the seeds have sprouted, what I love to do is actually use compostable pots. And the great thing about compostable pots is they're actually made of all your kitchen waste, recyclable items, cardboards, So this is actually from a toilet roll holder, the core of a toilet roll. And this is actually from those bottle can chips. As you can see, so usually when you buy a tin of chips, it's about 3 times this size. What I like to do is I cut it into 2 or maybe 3. And the base would be the one that has the metal tin. What you could do is the middle or the top part could be the one that you use the plastic as the base. Plastic cover as the base. So now that you have replanted it into compostable pots, it makes it much easier when you transplant it into the pot that you intend to grow it in. So the good thing about using compostable pots are you don't have to disturb the roots to transplant it. And usually the problem is when you are moving young seedlings or saplings, you kind of destroy the roots too much, so that's why they don't survive also. So you want to minimize disturbing the roots, and that's why small startup compostable pots like this are really very good. You don't need to spend so much money to buy special seedling pots, or those kind of things are really expensive, and I find it pointless because we already have so much waste around us, and we can actually reduce the waste from going into landfills by repurposing the things that we have. So these two things are actually grown from my kitchen waste also. Most of the time I use the rubbish or the kitchen waste that you would call to regrow. So I believe in what we call eating healthy, so that we can use the excess or the leftovers or the scraps or the waste of those healthy food to then feed our plants, so that those plants can then feed us again, or using those kitchen waste to regrow. So this is what I call eat, grow, eat. So here we have a rock melon grown from the seed of the rock melon that I ate, of course. These are ground nuts, which are from the dried condiment section. So you don't have to necessarily buy the fresh ground nuts from the store or from the market. You can actually just go to the dried condiment section. And these are pumpkin seeds, of course, from the pumpkin that I already ate. Now some of you may be wondering, how do you make the compostable pots out of toilet rolls? So here, you create a cut like this and just put it in. There you go. So this is your compostable pot. Now, I like to use, like I told you, I like to use a lot of recycled items for my waste. It can be packagings that, which makes you just think twice about what kind of things you're buying. If you can, make more conscious decisions about the kind of items you buy, what kind of packagings they come in. So this is actually packaging for my face mask. I choose to buy something that is packaging that's entirely compostable. Actually, I didn't buy this. This was a gift for me for my birthday. Yeah, so this is another pot that I would use. So essentially, if you start thinking and being more conscious about the kind of items you buy, you pick the right things with the right packaging, all of this can become your compostable pot without having to spend any extra money on it. Now, so when I talk about how do you transplant your plants, here is some basic things that I like to have around with me. So as you can see, all of these are things that you can get from all the food you've eaten. So for me, I like to eat healthier things like nuts instead of potato chips, and I sometimes choose nuts with shells. These are actually cheaper out there, and all these shells are actually so much good nutrients for your plants. So here are some dried leaves. So another thing that I really like, corn. It's corn. So what I do is I use every part of the corn. As you can see here, these are all the corn leaves. When I'm watching TV, what I do is just cut them up into really small pieces, and then you'll have all this goodness here for your plants. Eggshells. Eggs is another thing that I always must have for my meals. Breakfast especially, I really love eggs. So these are also really great source of calcium for your plants. And tea, I sometimes have tea or coffee in the morning. All these are also really good for your plants. And next are all this plastic waste. We're going to be doing something really great with all these things today. So what you do is first you pick a pot. It can be a pot with drainage, that is great. Or sometimes you have pots that are without any holes. So you're wondering, how do I pot a plant or pot a seedling, anything for that matter? How do you pot a new plant into something without holes? This is a common mistake that people make. What they do is they immediately fill the entire thing with soil, but you don't want to be doing that because then there is no drainage for it. So regardless if it's an indoor plant or an edible plant, you always need to create drainage for it. Especially for those plants that do not like to have a very wet and moist kind of soil. So you'll have to learn about the types of soil that is suitable for the different types of plants too, especially for the different type of vegetables and edibles. But we'll get into that in the other episodes too. So when you've got a pot, what you're going to do is create an internal drainage. And how are we going to do that? These are my simple favorite things to do. Just use any stones you can find from the road, pop it in, and that creates a layer. Now if you don't have stones, it's fine to just use all this plastic, bottle caps. You know, what you want to do is elevate the soil. See how it elevates the soil here? So all you got to do is just top it there. And there you already have an elevation. What happens next? Well, if you would like, what you can do is use all those bags of tea that you have. You must make sure that you dry all the tea bags first. This was already dry, and what you can do is just throw all the dried tea leaves into the soil, but keep the bags. So these are the bags that I've kept. And what I'm going to do is just use it as a filter. So you see here, an elevation of soil and a filter. So whether or not it's a pot with holes, you're going to put the filter in so that the soil doesn't spill out through the holes of the pot. And if you like, well, you can always start throwing in great compostable food for your soil nutrients. So if you don't have tea bags, another thing that I really love again is to use all this goodness from corns. So these are the corn fibers. These are actually what I use as my cheat to those cocoa ones. So you can just use the fibers here, all those here, to create a filter. And now what you have is an elevation of soil. Your soil will only be from here onwards. So this is where all your water would drain out. Now there are some plants that do not like wet feet, so it's very important, even if you have drainage holes in your pots, that you still create this. So what kind of plants are those? You have things like onions and garlics. They do not like the soil to be too moist. So that's why it's important to always have this elevation of soil first. Now when I say add in all these goodies into your soil, so what you can do is mix in the finer pieces, all the leaves, or use the eggshells. Now the thing about using eggshells is you actually should rinse it once you've cracked out the egg, give it a wash and peel out the thin white fibers inside. If you skip this step, this is going to attract all the ants to your soil. So a lot of people have been asking me, like, can I use eggshells in my soil? Yes, you can. You just got to make sure that you clean it thoroughly first and then dry it. If you can, sun dry it. This would really help to get away all the dirt inside, all the gunk inside that attracts all the ants. What I like to do is I take an old blender that I no longer use for food and I just grind it up really fine. So you can see I keep this by my kitchen sink, so whenever I'm cooking and once I'm done with the shells, I just keep it one side to wash and to dry, and then whenever I'm free I just put it into the blender. So all of these fine ones can be mixed into the soil, or if you would like to, once you've topped the soil, you can actually just sprinkle this on the top of the soil. You can sprinkle, choose anything that you have. You can sprinkle the eggshells, or you can sprinkle the leaves, or you can sprinkle this, nut shells. So what I really like about using nut shells to top the soil is if you stay in a place where all your plants are under the gutter, so a lot of rain is going to be splashing really hard on the soil. You don't want that to happen because it erodes the soil. What you need to do is make sure that the water flows onto the soil very gently, and that's why it's really great to have all this kind of shells or mulch using the leaves. So this is how I typically would pot my plants. So I have here a plant that is usually under the gutter of my upstairs neighbor's balcony, and this one hangs over my balcony railing, so that's why it gets a lot of rain splashing on it. That's why people ask me, did I purposely put the stones on the top of the soil? Yes, I do. And what I also do is add red soil. You can see the redness here. So why do I add red soil on top of the soil? Why do I top it off with this? Well, because again, I don't want the water to splash too hard from the rain. And also, some plants do not like it too wet or moist. So plants like this, garlic and onions, as you can see, I've had this here for about 3 to 4 weeks already. I've already harvested the leaves a few times to garnish my food. So let's recap what we've learned here today. Always use a compostable pot when starting your seeds. Even if you're doing cuttings, you know, a compostable pot is really great. You can upgrade it to a bigger compostable pot. Okay, and when you replant it into the final pot that you want it in, just put the entire compostable pot inside. So of course, if you're using the one with a plastic base, all you need to do is just remove it, you know? So that's really easy. So once you've done the compostable pots and you're repotting it into its final pot, always make an elevation of soil. Have a filter, whichever the filter may be. It could be your tea bags, or it could be all of this from the corn or from your coconuts. Okay, and then you're going to fill up the soil, and you're going to top up the soil with something else. So you can choose to top up the soil with either, you know, eggshells or nut shells, or just mulch it with dried leaves. Okay, hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks everyone, see you again next